Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the third session of the hearing on the closure application filed by the owner of the Buena Vista Mobile Home Park. I wanted to thank all the participants, attorneys, parties, and members of the public for the very respectful tone and the thoughtful remarks that you've provided so far in this process. Tonight there will be an opportunity for members of the public to speak, as well as any park residents who were not able to speak last night. To give me an idea of the number of speakers, I wonder if everybody who wants to speak could please raise their hand. Okay, so not a large number, so it looks like we'll have some time. I've got about half a dozen speaker cards so far, so for those who want to speak, please fill out a card at the side of the room. If you are a park resident, please indicate your space number, hand them to the city staff, and then I'll take them up in the order received. I just want to remind people the mics don't pick up very well unless you get very close to them, so please speak directly into the microphone and also try to speak slowly so that the interpreters and the court reporter can capture your remarks. I also would like to clear up one possible misunderstanding about the hearing process. It was conveyed to me that some of the news media had reported I would be issuing a tentative decision tonight. That is not correct. The process we have contemplated from the outset is that after tonight's hearing is concluded, both the park owner and the park residents representatives will have an opportunity to submit written statements or closing briefs and also some supplemental expert reports. Once all that is completed, and we'll set a schedule for that before the end of the meeting tonight, then I will take all that information, all the transcript of the testimony, all the written materials that have been provided to me, and draft a tentative decision. And then the parties will be given an opportunity to review and comment on that before it becomes final. After it does become final, then there's an appeal right to the City Council. So I just wanted to make sure, I thought we'd been clear about the process, but I think some of the news reports were not quite correct on that. Okay, so we're going to just go down through the cards that I've got. The first speaker I have is, I'm going to ask people to limit your remarks to 3 minutes if you could. I'll try to give you a little bit of latitude on that since it looks like we don't have a huge number of speakers, but as a guideline I would ask 3 minutes for your remarks. I do have a timer, but it makes kind of a noisy beep, so I'm going to try not to use that. Okay, the first speaker is Amy Wilkinson.
Hello. So I live in the neighborhood across from the street from Buena Vista in Palo Alto. And the Buena Vista neighborhood is a wonderful community, and they have always been excellent neighbors. I value the community we have with them, and I feel content in knowing that in our community, we share a peaceful neighborhood together where there is access to services, access to good schools for all the children and the youth who live there, not just for those residents drawing high salaries. The economic diversity and unity, as it stands now, makes our community richer and stronger. We all benefit in Palo Alto when we maintain economically diverse neighborhoods, and we all suffer when we practice exclusion. Affordable alternatives for working class and middle class residents of Palo Alto are incredibly minimal. Right now, Buena Vista is up for displacements. The alternatives and the options being offered to the Buena Vista community are not viable or acceptable because they are not sufficient to keep the children in their schools or allow the families to stay together and stay in the neighborhood. Why demolish this stable, established neighborhood of affordable homes without a plan that ensures residents can stay in the community where they belong? The plan as it stands will displace generations of families who have been long-term residents of our community. It will disrupt the education of over 100 youth and children. It will be the single biggest displacement and loss of Palo Alto residents in our history. This sort of disaster should only be an unavoidable occurrence brought on by some event, some natural disaster out of our control. Why would such a thing happen in Palo Alto which is a city famous for innovation and in a time of incredible prosperity and well-being for the city. I hope the plan will be revised and our community will do the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Camille Townsend.
Good evening. My name is Camille Townsend. I am here as elected to the Palo Alto Board of Education and have been on the board for over 10 years. This is a statement of support for Buena Vista Mobile Home Park students and families that has been voted on and adopted by all members of the school board. At the Board of Education meeting of March 12, 2013, PAUSD students and graduates who reside in the Buena Vista Mobile Home Park publicly notified the school district of their mobile home park's possible closure. They urged the school district to help find a way for the families to continue to live in Palo Alto and for the children to continue attending PAUSD schools. The graduates spoke of the importance of their PAUSD education and advocated for the same educational opportunity for their younger siblings and family members. Information presented by the Friends of the Buena Vista Mobile Home Park lists that of the 375 people who live at the mobile home park, 125 are children. Of these children, 103 are PASD students currently enrolled at Barron Park, Juana Briones, Terman, and Gunn. The other 22 children are preschool age. 12% of the Barron Park Elementary students live at Buena Vista. Of the nearly 400 residents, most have low incomes and 82% are Latino. The advocacy group also shared that in addition to the possibility of losing their homes, community, friends, and schools, students may face separation from their extended families and a parent's potential job loss due to relocation. Given the above, the PAUSD Board of Education recognizes the importance of the testimony, experience, and advocacy of the Gunn graduates on behalf of the students currently living at the mobile home park as they seek to continue their PAUSD education. The valuable opportunities and outcomes of a PAUSD education as reported by our graduates. That School Board Policy 100, which states that the diversity of the student population and staff enriches the learning experience for all students, will be undermined by the loss of the significant number of culturally and economically diverse students. The developmental assets that guide Project Safety Net and jointly endorsed by the PAUSD and the City of Palo Alto. Therefore, the Board of Education resolves to reaffirm our commitment to Buena Vista students, to their education and future, to uphold the value of diversity in our schools and city, and acknowledge that Buena Vista Mobile Home Park residents represent an important part of our district's economic and ethnic diversity. And finally, to partner with the students, their families, the community, and the city as we seek favorable educational outcomes. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Ray Vacchetti.
Good evening. My name is Ray Vacchetti. I'm a resident of Palo Alto. Palo Alto is a community in which Asian families have moved in large numbers in recent years. The Asian proportion of the Palo Alto population is 27%. Of children of Asian descent enrolled in our schools, the proportion is 33% or higher. The general belief is that the quality of our schools is the overriding reason for the growth of this important part of our community. The Buena Vista children and their families now have what others who place high value on education want. The value of education is tangible. Anyone who thinks otherwise need only ask where they would be today if they'd had a poorer education. The opportunity to begin one's life with a first-class K-12 education may be invaluable, that is to say, hard to place a price on, but we can develop a proxy price by comparing the cost of housing in the community with a comparably high school system. I don't know what that proxy price is, but every effort should be made to approximate it and make that a significant part of the basis for determining compensation to the Buena Vista residents. I've been an educator for almost 60 years, and I've seen schooling and the significance of it firsthand as a teacher and as a school board member in Palo Alto. Secondhand as a foundation officer at the Hewlett Foundation, making grants to improve K-12 education. And third-hand as a researcher at the Carnegie Foundation for the Advancement of Teaching. In all of those places, it's unmistakably clear how significant a factor in the life of young people education can be, and what the economic value as well as the personal and humane value of education is. So I hope that will weigh heavily in your determination. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Jeff Wrench. I apologize if I get the pronunciation wrong on some of these names, but I'm seeing them for the first time.
Hello, my name is Jeff Wrench. I live in Barron Park, South Palo Alto, just a few blocks away from the mobile home park. In the last 10 years, I've had the chance to get to know many of the residents, and I treasure their presence and residents near me. I feel that it will be nothing less than a tragedy, that's not an understatement, tragedy if these neighbors of mine are forced out of our shared community. It's a tragedy for so many bright kids who lose their first class Palo Alto education and services. It's a tragedy for the rest of us who lose the ethnic diversity, income diversity, labor, and vitality that this park provides our town. I understand that this hearing is about what would be a just compensation for people were they forced to move. I was very impressed by Dr. Barr's comments on the first night of the hearing. It seems to me a just relocation number has to take account of the reality of the housing hyperinflation in our region. The quoted figures in the RIR could never support relocating to adequate housing in our region. The owner's lawyer asked for a number. I'll give her a number. Pending more research, I think that $200,000 per family might be a low estimate of $200,000. Frankly, the relocation number also has to include an inflation index to account for how fast prices are rising and will continue to rise in the future. The relocation sum should be huge to match our huge local housing costs. If this eats into the owner's profits, he might think again about selling and closing the park. If he does sell, then the residents who have supported the land over the years with their rent would deserve enough of the profits to survive comfortably. Make the relocation sum very high. A note to Prometheus, if you are listening, it is very unlikely that the city and its residents are ever going to agree to rezoning this land. Let's keep the park or transfer the land's wealth to its residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Gail Thompson.
Good evening. My name is Gail Thompson. I'm a longtime resident of Palo Alto and a longtime member of First Presbyterian Church in Palo Alto, a church that has been very active in social justice issues as long as I've been a member, which has been since 1965. I know I look a lot younger. But anyhow, we were active with getting Lytton Gardens started, senior housing. We were very active with getting the Opportunity Center going, and we had attorneys involved in the Tinsley volunteer program. So I'm very proud of my church and its continued social active focus as part of our faith. I want to give you the names of some of the other faith communities that are involved, and I know other people in other communities and other organizations support Buena Vista too, but these are the ones that have I have the list of First Congregational, St. Mark's Episcopal, First Presbyterian, All Saints Episcopal, Our Lady of the Rosary, St. Thomas Aquinas, St. Albert the Great, Unitarian Universalist Church, Congregation Beth Am, and Peninsula Interfaith Action. I think the speakers who went before me spoke very articulately about education. I believe in it so strongly. I don't think I'd be where I am today without an education. And we can't change the inequality of the economics at this point, but I think we can give equal opportunity with schools and give the Buena Vista children continued education in Palo Alto. That's very important to me. Diversity is very important to me. I wouldn't be who I am today if I hadn't had diversity in my life. I am an RN. I'm a master's prepared graduate of the University of California in San Francisco, where I needed to do research to graduate. And we did research on crisis, psychosocial stressors. Last night, Rick Winter said, forcing the residents out of Buena Vista would just be a wreck. It would be, it's documented, it's quantitative. I mean, I'm sure they're under a lot of stress now. And you can quantify it, you can look this data up, it's been there for years. Lack of transportation, lack of community, which I heard was very strong last night. Disruption for the schools, disruption for the teenagers, on and on and on. And I worked in a variety of settings in my professional work, and I had the opportunity to make some home visits to several people in the Buena Vista Mobile Home Park. One, many years ago, we'll never forget that person. Never, never, never. I can't say any more about that. Very grateful to live there. And another one recently, last year, who was very worried about where she would go next, a senior person. I'm hoping, and I will mention that there is, since I'm a UC graduate, UCSF graduate, I know that the Prometheus and the Diller family has generously donated to the cancer research up there. So I know they do donate to these kinds of things. But I do hope for a solution that benefits the residents. And I know we live in a free trade economy and that the owner is able to get something back from it. And it sounds like he will with what I've heard so far. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The next speaker is Joy Slezak.
Good evening. I'm Joy Slizer. It's a hard one.
Sorry, I was way off on that
That's
one.
okay. I've lived in Palo Alto for more than 50 years, most of that being in South Palo Alto in the Charleston Meadows area. We chose that area when we first moved here in 1966 because we wanted our kids to go to a school that was diverse, and at that point it was Ventura. I'm sad that Palo Alto could lose the essential affordable housing that Buena Vista affords. I understand that the owner has the right to sell his property, and I also know that he has a responsibility to the residents being displaced. The offers that I've heard to the residents are not reasonable, and I'm wondering, where are they supposed to go? What are they supposed to do? In looking at the list of the groups supporting Buena Vista, I see groups where justice is important. What I've heard so far here is not just. I'd like to see the city, Palo Alto Housing, other groups work together to find a solution that benefits all. It makes me sad to see that the rich are getting richer, the poor getting poorer, and that there's little compassion for those who live close to the edge. Thank you.
Thank you. The next card, I believe this may be a Spanish speaker, Jose Lopez. If I could get the interpreter to help out on this.
Sí, buenas tardes. Mi nombre es José López.
Good afternoon. My name is Jose Lopez.
Yo vivo en el espacio 24.
I live on Space 24.
Estoy ahí desde el 2006.
I'm there since 2006.
Tengo 4 hijos,
I have 4 children,
2 en Barron Park, uno en
2
Terman,
in Barnum Park,
otro en Terman
one in Turman,
y otro en Gan.
and another one in Gan.
Okay. Yo vivo en una esta casa de 3 recámaras.
I live in a 3-bedroom home.
Cuando yo llegué ahí, yo pagué $55,000 por mi unidad.
When I arrived there, I paid $55,000 for my unit.
Ahorita solamente me están ofreciendo $35,000.
Right now, they're only offering me $35,000.
So, yo pienso que si los señores, como dicen, ellos compraron en 4 millones cuando
So
llegaron ahí,
I think that if the gentlemen, as they say, bought for $4 million when they got there,
y ahorita estaba mencionando una cantidad de 14 millones y medio,
and now a figure of $14.5 million is being mentioned,
su propiedad ha subido como un 400%
their property has increased by some 400%,
y la mía ha perdido $20,000.
and mine has lost $20,000.
Yo pienso, como estaba mencionando,
I
que,
think, like I was stating,
que si decían que si ellos pagaban $100,000,
that if, as they said they would pay $100,000,
ellos iban a salir solamente con $5 millones en su bolsa.
they would walk away with only $5 million in their pocket.
¿Por qué ellos no aceptan vendernos a nosotros y que se lleven sus 14 millones y
Why
medio en su bolsa?
don't they accept to sell to us and walk away with $14.5 million in their pocket?
Yo pienso que eso sería algo justo y razonable para todos porque nosotros no nos queremos ir.
I think that would be something just for all of us because we do not want to leave.
No queremos 100,000, no queremos 200,000, queremos quedarnos.
We don't want 100,000, we don't want 200,000, we want to remain.
Su persona que ellos contrataron como evaluador,
The person that they contracted to do the valuations,
él dice que ha cerrado 9 parques de trailers.
he says that he has closed down 9 trailer parks.
Para mí, él no ha cerrado ni la puerta de su casa.
As far as I'm concerned, he hasn't even closed the door to his own house.
El primer día que le estuvieron haciendo preguntas, él nunca tuvo ninguna respuesta para nada.
The first day that he was being asked questions, he never had an answer for anything.
Entonces, si ellos me están dando a mí $35,000,
So if they're giving me $35,000,
que me digan en qué ciudad yo me puedo ir a comprar una trailer de las mismas unidades, las mismas habitaciones,
may they tell me to what town I can go and buy a trailer with the same amount of bedrooms
y que me ofrezcan la misma educación para mis hijos.
and to offer me the same education for my children.
Es todo, muchas gracias.
That's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The next speaker is Sue Eldridge.
Hello, I'm Sue Eldridge, and my daughter Gracie is a 4th grader at Barron Park Elementary School. I'm also the co-chair of the Palo Alto PTA Council's Buena Vista Advocacy Committee. I'm here, like so many others, to affirm what an important and valued part of the community Buena Vista families and children are. Every day we benefit from the richness they bring to our lives. We have to find a way to keep them in our community. You've heard over and over again from the residents and from other community members about the value of a Palo Alto education to Buena Vista children's future. We know this is why so many Buena Vista parents are living in our community. The Stanford report that Professor Padilla discussed with you yesterday also affirms what we know. Buena Vista parents are engaged in their children's education, and their children are taking advantage of the educational opportunities that our schools provide. There's no better demonstration of this than the fact that 100% of PAUSD students from Buena Vista graduate from high school. These statistics fly in the face of an almost 30% high school dropout rate for Latino students across California. So we know Buena Vista students benefit from a Palo Alto education, but I want to also stress how much we as a community and all of our children benefit from having Buena Vista children in our Palo Alto schools. Let me begin with the personal. 1 in every 10 of the students at Barron Park Elementary School lives in Buena Vista, and the kids and their families are an integral, beloved part of our school community. Barron Park School is wonderful because our students are from many walks of life, both culturally and economically. Buena Vista children contribute mightily to this richness. My daughter has friends from Buena Vista that she made in kindergarten. Her friends play at our house and have sleepovers. She dances with them, and they are at her birthday parties. In the parking lot, at drop-off and pickup time, Buena Vista parents are part of the mix. Our children appreciate the Latino culture and the generosity of the families and their close family bonds. Every year, Latino parents generously host a huge Cinco de Mayo celebration for everyone. I could go on, but there's just one more point that I want to make, and it is that my daughter and all of the other children at Barron Park benefit from having friends that have less economically. They understand in real ways that not everyone grows up with the influence that they experience. And I know my daughter appreciates how hard Buena Vista parents work for their kids' futures. It makes the opportunities that we all have something to appreciate and not to take for granted. So I want you also to know that the broader Palo Alto school community cares deeply about Buena Vista students remaining in our schools. As I mentioned, I'm co-chair of the PTA Council's BV Advocacy Committee, and very shortly after the plans to redevelop Buena Vista were announced, the PTA Council, which represents 17 schools in the district, unanimously voted to set in place a motion supporting efforts to keep the children of Buena Vista Mobile Home Park in Palo Alto in our schools by supporting efforts to find them affordable housing within PAUSD boundaries. A strong statement. You heard from Camille at the beginning of comments that the school board has passed a unanimous, and I want to reinforce, unanimous vote of support for our Buena Vista children remaining in our schools. To me, the strongest part of their statement is that the cultural and economic diversity that Buena Vista students bring to our schools enriches the learning experiences of all students. The board affirmed what we experience every day at Barron Park Elementary. We gain as much from Buena Vista students we gain as much as Buena Vista students do from having them as a part of our community. So lastly, I don't think as of yet anybody from Project Safety Net has testified, but commented. I want to tie this issue to the developmental assets that are a cornerstone of Project Safety Net's citywide collaboration to promote the overall well-being of young people in our communities. The developmental assets are common sense. They're also research-based values that are highly correlated with young people's thriving. Among these are the following, both of which argue for keeping the Buena Vista students in our schools. The asset of cultural competence. Young people need to have knowledge of and comfort with people of different cultural, racial, and ethnic backgrounds. Equality and social justice. Young people need to experience in real ways the value of equality and social justice. There could be no clearer demonstration of our community's true commitment to these values and goals than support for the students and residents of Buena Vista to remain in Palo Alto. The economic divide in Palo Alto is ever widening, and it's time to stand up and claim Buena Vista families and students as a part of our community that we simply can't lose. Not only because they benefit from what Palo Alto has to offer, but as importantly, because our children and all of us benefit from the Buena Vista families being a part of our community. Thanks.
Thank you. The next speaker is Eileen Altman.
Hello, I am Reverend Dr. Eileen Altman. I am one of the associate pastors at First Congregational Church of Palo Alto, United Church of Christ. We're in the Leland Manor Triple L neighborhood, somewhat far away from where Buena Vista is located, but not far away in our hearts. Ever since we learned about the potential closure of Buena Vista Mobile Home Park, many members of our congregation have been paying attention to this issue on a consistent basis. We've invited residents of the park to come and speak to our congregation to educate us about what the closure of the park would mean for them and for their families. And we stand in solidarity with the residents of Buena Vista Mobile Home Park and want them to stay in our community. If the park closes, it will tear at the fabric of Palo Alto. It will be a massive displacement of some of our neighbors. And for us in our tradition, a fundamental principle is to love our neighbor as ourselves. And so I come to you to speak to that concern of my congregation. As I understand it, the residents have offered to purchase the park. That to me seems to be the most just plan of action. It allows the residents to stay in the community. It allows the property owner to be compensated for his property, and it creates the possibility for the residents to stay in the community for the long term and to contribute to our community for the long term. In addition, I'm a resident of East Palo Alto, and I live in the neighborhood that's just to the west of 101. And that little neighborhood of East Palo Alto has 15% of the entire stock of below market rate housing for the county of San Mateo, just in that little neighborhood right there. That should be an indication to you of how little available below market rate housing there is in the Bay Area. It's really abysmal how little there is available. And this is one community in which that housing is already present, it's already available, and it cannot easily be replaced. No matter what the level of compensation is financially, finding available affordable housing seems all but impossible. So I want to close just with a reminder of a story from the Gospel of Luke, in which Jesus responds to the question about who is our neighbor, who is your neighbor, that we are supposed to love as ourselves. And he tells the story about an unlikely person who comes to the aid of someone in need, a Samaritan, a despised person, someone who seemed to be not like the people to whom the story was addressed. And in some ways, the residents of Buena Vista don't seem like part of Palo Alto, what most of us think of as what Palo Alto looks like. But they are part of us. They are just as much a part of our community as anyone else. And to lose them would be tragic. And we might lose the ones who might offer us the exact kind of assistance we need to be all that we can become. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Emily Renzel, I believe.
Thank you, Mr. Labadie. I'm Emily Renzel, and I've been a Palo Alto resident for 50 years. I served on the Planning Commission from 1973 to 79, and on the City Council from 1979 to 91. I was around when the zoning was applied to Buena Vista Mobile Home Park after it was annexed to the city with the rest of Barron Park. And it was our intention then to give maximum protection to keeping Buena Vista in Palo Alto. Buena Vista was then and continues to be the most affordable housing in this town and probably on the whole peninsula. Buena Vista is a small, cohesive community within our community. Buena Vista residents work here, and the children go to school here. With the enormous housing shortage in Palo Alto, it is a certainty that any settlement offered to Buena Vista residents will not be enough to allow them to relocate anywhere in the community. It would be tragic to lose Buena Vista. Please support the Buena Vista residents and deny this highly inadequate relocation plan. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Jerry Underdahl.
Good evening. My name is Jerry Underdahl. I live in Barron Park, and my involvement with this community goes back to when I first moved here. My first job in Palo Alto was as an ESL teacher at Ventura School, and I was so delighted to hear mention by an earlier speaker of how important and significant that school was. It was unique in this school district. There were a number of African American students. There were Latino students. There was a range of kids and families and others that made it a model for education that we all benefited from. We've heard a lot already, and I'll just second it, that diversity in education is what makes a good education now. If you're a Californian, Northern California, and you have no experience living next to, in community with Latino residents, friends, classmates, you have an impoverished education for going forward. And others have made the same point, but I really believe that it's bad education if you take them away. The discussion always seems to go, well, what are we giving them? No. What do we get from their presence in the community? And I believe that that has to be kept in mind. I want to come to the question of the relocation amount and some figuring I've been hearing. Property rights folks have been complaining on Town Square about the fairness of it. And I was doing a little, I don't know the details of everything, but here's my back of the envelope calculation. It cost $4 million for the entire property at the beginning, of which the Gissers had a half share. So that's $2 million from them. Then they bought out the half share from the other partners for $6 million. So that makes a total of $8 million that they had in the property. The entire property, which I gather from Dr. Barr's testimony, the shopping center, the mini center, was sold separately, and so you could consider a reduced amount that's actually in the park. So during this period of time, the Gissers have been maintaining the park, but they've been getting income. Let's ballpark it $750,000 a year, holding property for the day, against the day when they would be able to sell it in a favorable economic environment, presumably. In any case, they're not losing money while they're holding it. There are people who are holding property along El Camino that's vacant. They're not getting anything. And they're holding it for the same thing, for when the right investment time comes along to develop it. So the owners of the mobile homes have been engaged for, it sounds like the last 10 years, in a situation where they agree to substandard facilities in their mobile home park, and they don't, and in exchange, they get quite low rent. This worked to the advantage in many ways of all, because the key point for them is to be here. And I believe the key point probably for the owner is to put out as little money as possible in maintaining this thing that they're probably not going to hold on to long term anyway. The maintenance was deferred. There was no on-site manager, if I understood the testimony correctly. So these people were, the occupants, were responsible for the security of their neighbors as well as their families because there wasn't proper security there. And they took the bargain because it was cheap, they could be here. One last point. I would like to see a solution that is a long-term solution. I know that the current occupants are a major concern. Yet, I'm concerned about the city of Palo Alto. How can we keep affordable housing there long-term? The Housing Corporation, I believe, figures 55 years for properties that they maintain as affordable housing. If we need the population that we've got there now, you know, their lives are going to be lived. They'll have other opportunities, other occasions, and move on. So I'm beyond concerned for those residents. I'm concerned that a solution be sought that could create long-term affordable housing that would benefit the city and all parties going forward, because we really do need that economic and ethnic and racial diversity within our town. Thank you very much for your patience.
Thank you. The last card I have is Ruth DeLarios. If she could come forward, and if there is anyone else who would like to speak, please fill out a card and bring it forward.
Hi, I'm Ruth DeLarios, and I'm a fifth-generation Californian. I was born and raised in Palo Alto and graduated from Pali High. I live in the Fair Meadow District. And I have an idea that I would like to make public. Palo Alto has been declared the second richest small city in the United States. We have a multitude of multimillionaires and billionaires. We're all aware that the wealthy love nothing more than tax write-offs. What an opportunity for some of our richest citizens to step in and help out. They could, for example, buy Buena Vista outright, give the owner a fair price. They could donate Buena Vista to the current residents. They could run Buena Vista as a corporation, a consortium. So I feel that this is an opportunity for some of the richest people in the United States to show their concern for our last remaining low-income enclave and to support our diversity in Palo Alto. Thank you.
We've got one more card. Jenny Kordowski.
Nice.
I got one right.
That never happens. It's an awful name. Okay, my name is Jenny Kordowski, and not only am I a Palo Alto resident, but I'm also a Barron Park family. I'm here tonight to support the residents of Buena Vista because we are allies in the fight to retain affordable housing and diverse student populations in our public schools. My family and I moved to the area 2 years ago for work. The two-bedroom apartment we rented in Mountain View, then from Eves at Creekside, then it was Avalon at Creekside Company, cost us $2,500 a month when we moved in, and $2,700 a year later when we renewed our lease. From reading lots of reviews on Yelp, I learned that it is a common practice for apartment companies in Silicon Valley to raise rents annually by 10 to 14%. Although we like the community we lived in, the fact that each annual increase in rent closely matched each annual increase in our income, we determined that this was not a sustainable place to raise our kids, and we decided to move. But we're still here. Through dumb luck, we were offered a spot that we waited for 15 months in a below market rate unit in Palo Alto. But we know we truly can't afford to stay. We can't purchase a home. We can't afford to help our parents retire near us. They couldn't afford to live here anyway. And we can't truly lay roots. I checked today, and our previous apartment in Mountain View is now listed at $3,400, a $900 jump in 2 years. Why? Well, there are many factors that affect a market, but one thing that is of note that occurred in that neighborhood is the construction of Madeira apartments owned and operated by the Prometheus Company just 2 blocks from our previous home. It is a 147-unit complex with the cheapest one-bedroom costing $3,400 and the cheapest two-bedroom costing $4,400. I have friends who were renting single-family homes in that neighborhood who are now choosing to leave because their rents are increasing also from $3,500 a month to $5,000 or more a month. I bring this up to put into perspective why it's so hard to find affordable housing for the residents of Buena Vista. As middle-class families like my own get priced out, they push into markets that were more traditionally options for lower-income families. Mobile home parks can suddenly seem attractive since they offer protection against the volatility of a healthy retail market. So there is my very personal example of how we as a community lose out. But another facet is who we lose. Well, we lose families like mine and my friends, all families with stay-at-home parents. We lose active PTA members, we lose community organizers, we lose artists. We lose the people who create stability for a neighborhood in terms of safety and positive community interactions. I know this because, as I've shared, it's happening right now to my old neighborhood in Mountain View, just 4 miles away. And with the closure of Buena Vista, it will happen here in the Barron Park neighborhood as well. There is a lot of work to be done in our world. I doubt there is anyone in this room that doesn't work hard. But some of the most important work is the work done for free, and that is only an option in situations where housing costs don't repel one-parent stay-at-home families like mine, or families like the ones at Buena Vista, who provide childcare for one another and vital aid services to disabled and elderly members of our community. Please honor this unique kind of work that keeps communities thriving. Please keep the residents in their homes and in this community.
That's the last speaker card I have, so unless there's anyone else who would like to speak, I'll go ahead and close the public comment period. I know the attorneys have had some discussion earlier about a briefing schedule. Have you reached any understanding on that? Okay, looks like I might have one more speaker running up, so we'll see if she wants to talk. Okay. Then why don't we conclude this speaker and take a brief recess to try to come to an appropriate schedule for the post-hearing filing of closing statements.
I'm going to be brief, and I'm sorry to be late, but I did talk with one of the residents, and it appears that the owner is not had an appraisal come which was very much lower than an outside appraisal in the market of 20,000 for one home, which the outside appraiser said was 50,000. And also in another case, the owner was had an appraisal of 28,000, and the outside appraisal said around 60. So it seems to me that they're not being compensated fairly. And when you really look intensely at this situation, little personal background. I'm married to a man from India for 46 years, and I know the richness of the diversity. This city is in danger of becoming another Atherton. We have CEOs, and it's fine. They're wonderful people. They're buying whole blocks of homes around them so that they can create this kind of rich enclave. Palo Alto has always had diversity. The richness, the beauty of respecting other cultures, as we've heard here tonight, is worth any amount of difficulty to go through. So I would hope that you will rule that there are other considering factors and you will not evict them. Get back to the table, look at those figures really hard, and know what the best decision is, which I think is not to evict the people.
Okay. Could you state your name for the record? I'm not sure I was able to read that.
Saibel Lavolo Bouchan.
Okay. Well, maybe you could give the spelling to our co-reporter on the break. I'm not going to attempt that one. Okay, so really the last item of business we have is to set up some post-hearing procedures as far as submitting additional expert reports and closing statements. So why don't we take a 10-minute break and then conclude that when we return. Okay, thank you, everybody. We're going to go ahead and get started again. So if you could conclude your conversations and take a seat. I think we're fairly close to wrapping things up here. I had asked the attorneys, let me wait for the rest of the folks to get back in. I had requested the attorneys for the park owner and the residents to mutually stipulate to a schedule for submitting written closing statements that they both intend to prepare. Those will be at their discretion accompanied by supplemental expert reports. The schedule that was arrived at is for the owner's closing statement and their rebuttal expert report to the report of Dr. Kenneth Barr to be submitted by June 16th. That's correct? Okay. And
That's correct.
The Residents Association will have 30 days approximately to respond to that, so their information will be submitted by July 16th. The park owner will then have 1 week to reply to that. So that'll conclude the submittal of written information for my consideration. And after all that is concluded, then I will begin drafting a written statement of decision, a tentative statement. I believe the park owner's attorney wanted to make a few concluding remarks at this point.
I would like to say, and I've presented to the hearing officer and to the senior assistant city attorney, Grant Calling, a letter from me on behalf of the park owner modifying or amending certain portions of the relocation impact report. So for the past 2 nights, and indeed even so far tonight, we have heard various comments, in particular on the first and second nights from residents about the amount of the mitigation assistance, et cetera, and also about the issue of the appraisal of the homes. First of all, the appraiser was selected by the city and paid for by the owner. The appraiser was approved by the city based upon his qualifications and so forth. And further, the ordinance provides that the appraisals of the homes are to be done at the time of the submission of the first relocation impact report, or the first at the time of the submission of the resident impact report, and does not say that an updated appraisal is required. However, in consideration of the testimony, again in the past 2 nights, my client has agreed that they will ask Mr. Beccaria to update the appraisals within 6 months at most of the time of the relocation of any tenant, so that a fair market on-site value per the terms of the ordinance can be given by the appraiser. So the appraisals will be updated to reflect the most current value of the home at or about the time of relocation. So although not required under the ordinance, we will do that in recognition of the residents' concerns that the appraisals are already old. Then further, in recognition of the residents' testimony in the past 2 evenings about the difficulty of relocating to other forms of housing, again, the ordinance is written such that with respect to people who are not relocating their mobile home, so if they are moving into another mobile home park or an apartment in any city, whether it be Palo Alto or any other city, that it is a partial rent subsidy, and even Dr. Barr noted that in his report. We are now amending the relocation impact report. Previously, there was much discussion about how we had capped the rent subsidy at 40%. We are now amending the report to add a 100% rent subsidy, so that and a rent subsidy, just so everyone is understanding the term, is the difference between the rent paid at Buena Vista Mobile Home Park at the time that the resident relocates and the rent at the new either mobile home park or apartment, whether that be, and we have given, there is no need to amend anything in the actual resident impact relocation report because the city required us to give data regarding 100% rent subsidy and what we originally calculated as a 40% rent subsidy. So now and that is found on pages 73, 74, and 76 of the relocation impact report. So now the figure of the 40% can be ignored, and all calculations can be done based upon the 100% rent subsidy, which does remain for the same period of time. Per the terms of the ordinance, the owner is required to give a rent subsidy for a period of 12 months. So we will pay 100% rent subsidy at the new housing for a period of 12 months, in addition to the startup costs, which are the first and last month's rent and security deposit, and moving costs. And then I would remind, again, in mindful of the speakers last night in particular, who talked about senior status and handicap status, the ordinance does include a reference to, and indeed requires, that the owner pay additional assistance as required for handicapped and those residents over the age of 62. So that was always contemplated under the terms of the relocation impact report. Okay, so again, we have presented a letter to this effect to Mr. Labadie, Mr. Calling, and of course to opposing counsel. Thank you.
Thank you for that clarification. The letter will be incorporated into the record and treated as an amendment to the relocation impact report. Ms. Morris, did you or anyone else on your team have any additional comments you'd like to make at this time? I'm sorry, I was just stating that the letter submitted by the park owner will be included in the record. That's a public record if anyone would like to get a copy of it. And I was just inviting the representatives of the Residents Association to make any final remarks they may have at this time.
Thanks. Again, I'm Melissa Morris. I'm the attorney for the Buena Vista Mobile Home Park Residents Association. Thank you, Mr. Labadie, for conducting the hearing, and to everyone who came out and spoke. I wanted to make one thing clear, which was that this amendment to the relocation impact report was received both by the hearing officer and by us about 4 or 5 minutes ago. So it's really impossible for me to respond to the amendments in these closing statements. We anticipate responding to them in writing as is appropriate. But I just wanted to say a few quick things regarding the testimony that I know we all heard Monday night, Tuesday night, and tonight. Buena Vista is clearly an important part of the Palo Alto community. The residents at Buena Vista are important to Palo Alto, and Palo Alto is important to the residents who live here. It's one of the community's only sources of affordable housing, and so its preservation is important, as is making sure that if the residents of Buena Vista are forced to leave their homes, that they do get adequate compensation. And so I think that the residents really put it best when they talked about the fact that if they have to leave or if they have to go far, they may lose their jobs. Their kids will lose their right to have the quality education that they have had. They may lose their support system and a lot of other less tangible things like the sense of community that exists at Buena Vista. And I also wanted to make it clear that the residents at Buena Vista, it's not just about money for them. No one at Buena Vista has been asking for something for nothing. As a lot of the residents mentioned, we have been trying to figure out a way to work with the owner to preserve the park. And I think that there is a lot of, there's clearly in this room a lot of will to have that happen. There's a lot of political will in Palo Alto, and quite frankly, there's a lot of dollars out there from people who seem interested in making that happen. And so perhaps as we go forward, we can, I know it's outside the scope of the hearing, but perhaps as we go forward, we can continue to talk about that as a possible resolution as well. In terms of the relocation impact report that was submitted prior to the hearing, that was, that this hearing has been about, until the last 5 minutes, our position is still that it must be rejected outright. And with respect to this new proposal, we haven't had any opportunity to review it yet, but we look forward to submitting comments in writing. Thank you.
Okay, just once again, I wanted to thank everyone who has participated in this hearing process. I know a lot of you have taken time away from your evenings to be here. Certainly we've heard some very professional presentations from the attorneys both for the Residents Association and for the park owner, and many very thoughtful and sincere comments from members of the public that represented a wide range of views. And I just wanted to say I appreciated the thoughtful and respectful tone of the proceedings. At this point, I'm going to conclude the hearing, subject to receiving the additional materials pursuant to the schedule agreed to by the parties. And thank you all, and have a good evening.